can't do this." Lucas Reed's voice echoed through the Malibu estate, silencing 300 of the wealthiest guests in Los Angeles. The string quartet stopped mid-note. The waves crashing against the cliffs below seemed to freeze. Every eye in the garden turned toward the altar where Lucas stood in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, his hand still holding Mary J's. Mary's face went pale beneath her cathedral-length veil. "Lucas," she whispered, "what are you—" "I know," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I know everything." The words hit her like a bullet. Her bouquet of white roses trembled in her hands. "Lucas, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" His voice was calm, but his eyes were ice. "Explain why you've been lying to me for 18 months. Explain why everything about you is fake." Tears streamed down Mary's face, ruining her perfect makeup. "It's not what you think," she begged. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. I can explain everything." Lucas stared at her. This woman he'd thought he loved, this woman he'd been about to make his wife, and felt something shatter inside his chest. "I found the emails, Mary. I found all of them." Her breath caught. "I know who sent you. I know why you're really here. And I know that this—" He gestured at the flowers, the guests, the elaborate altar overlooking the Pacific Ocean. "Was never real." He released her hand. It fell to her side like something dead. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was trying to protect you. You have to believe me. I was trying to protect me." He laughed bitterly. "You were sent to destroy me, and I almost let you." He turned to face the stunned crowd, senators, celebrities, tech moguls, his own family seated in the front row, with expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed satisfaction. "I apologize to everyone for wasting your time," Lucas announced, his voice carrying across the garden. "There will be no wedding today. Please enjoy the reception. The bar is open." Then he walked down the aisle alone, past the gasping guests, past his mother's smug smile, past the life he'd thought he was building. And Mary J., the woman in the $80,000 wedding dress, collapsed to her knees at the altar, sobbing into her hands. But here's what no one knew. Not the guests, not the press, not even Lucas himself. Mary J. wasn't the villain in this story. She was the only person who'd tried to save him, and he'd just destroyed her for it. You just watched a billionaire walk away from his own wedding after calling his fiancée a fraud in front of 300 people. But you don't know what those emails said. You don't know who really sent Mary J. into Lucas Reed's life. And you don't know why she was crying and begging him to listen. Because here's the thing about this story. The woman everyone thinks is the villain might actually be the hero. And the people Lucas trusts most might be the ones who wanted to destroy him all along. If you've ever judged someone before knowing their full story, if you've ever discovered that the person you thought was your enemy was actually fighting for you, then stay with me. Because this story is about to show you that the greatest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from family. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to see who the real villain is. Now, let me take you back 18 months. To the night, Lucas Reed met the woman who would almost become his wife. Lucas Reed had been alone for most of his adult life. Not the kind of alone where you don't have people around you. The kind where you have hundreds of people around you, employees, investors, socialites, family, and none of them actually know you. He was 40 years old, worth $4.2 billion, and the founder of Nexus Technologies, a social media and AI company that had disrupted Silicon Valley and made him one of the most powerful men in tech. He was also the loneliest person at every party he attended. His mother, Victoria Reed, had been planning his future since before he was born. Old money Connecticut family, private schools, Harvard business, the right connections, the right career, the right wife. But Lucas had never found the right wife. Victoria had introduced him to dozens of suitable women over the years, heiresses, socialites, daughters of business partners, and Lucas had rejected every single one. "You're too picky," Victoria would say, her voice dripping with disappointment. "You're 40 years old. The Reed legacy needs an heir." But Lucas didn't want a legacy. He wanted love, real love, the kind his parents never had, the kind that made you feel seen, not used. He'd given up on finding it. And then he met Mary J. It was at a charity gala in downtown Los Angeles, One of those events where billionaires wrote checks to feel good about themselves while drinking champagne that cost more than most people's rent. Lucas had been standing alone by the bar, counting down the minutes until he could leave when he heard a voice behind him. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else on Earth." He turned, and there she was, Mary J., 28 years old, black, beautiful in a way that made his chest hurt, wearing a simple emerald dress that probably cost a fraction of what every other woman in the room was wearing, and smiling at him like she could see right through his expensive suit to the lonely man underneath. "That obvious?" Lucas asked. "Only to someone who feels the same way," Mary replied. "These events are exhausting. Everyone performing for everyone else." "You're not performing?" "I'm too broke to perform," she laughed. "I'm only here because I volunteered for the catering company, and they didn't have enough servers. I'm supposed to be carrying a tray of champagne, but I took a break." Lucas found himself smiling. Actually smiling. "Won't you get in trouble?" "Probably, but I needed air, and you looked like you needed company." She tilted her head. "I'm Mary, by the way." "Lucas." "I know who you are, Lucas Reed. Everyone in this room knows who you are." She stepped closer. "But I'm guessing not many of them know who you actually are. There's a difference." It was such a simple statement, but it hit Lucas somewhere deep. "No," he admitted quietly. "Not many people know that." "Then maybe you should let someone in," Mary said, "before you forget how." She walked away after that, back to her catering job, back to her real life. But Lucas couldn't stop thinking about her. He found her number through the catering company, called her the next day, asked if he could buy her coffee. "Coffee?" She'd laughed. "Billionaires don't drink coffee. They drink whatever costs the most." "I drink black coffee from 7-Eleven, Lucas said. "It's the only thing that reminds me I'm human." There was a pause. "Okay," Mary said finally. "Coffee sounds good." That was 18 months ago. They dated quietly at first, away from the press, away from his family. Lucas wanted to protect what they had before the world could destroy it. Mary was different from anyone he'd ever met. She didn't care about his money, didn't ask for gifts, didn't try to be seen with him at the right events. She just listened, laughed at his terrible jokes, made him feel like a person instead of a portfolio. For the first time in his life, Lucas felt seen. He proposed 6 months ago. Private proposal. No photographers. Just the two of them on his boat at sunset. Mary had cried, said yes, promised to love him forever. And Lucas had believed her. His mother, of course, had been horrified. A caterer, Lucas. A woman with no family, no background, no connections. Do you have any idea what people will say? I don't care what people say. You should care, Victoria had hissed. The Reed name means something, and you're about to drag it through the mud for some gold-digging nobody who's clearly using you. She's not using me. They're all using you, Lucas. Wake up. But Lucas hadn't listened. He'd planned the wedding of the century, 300 guests, Malibu estate, the whole world watching. And then, 3 hours before the ceremony, his mother had come to his dressing room with a folder. I didn't want to do this, Victoria had said, her face arranged in perfect concern. But you need to see who you're really marrying. Inside the folder were emails, dozens of them, between Mary J. and someone named M. Harrington. And as Lucas read them, his entire world collapsed. Because according to those emails, Mary J. wasn't some random caterer who'd stumbled into his life by accident. She was a plant, sent to seduce him, marry him, and then help strip his company away from him in a hostile takeover. And the person who'd hired her, Marcus Harrington, Lucas's biggest competitor in tech, the man who'd been trying to destroy Nexus Technologies for years. Lucas had read every email twice, 3 times, searching for any sign that it wasn't true. But the evidence was overwhelming. Dates, payments, strategy documents, Mary's reports on Lucas's vulnerabilities, his schedule, his security codes. Everything had been a lie. And Lucas had walked to that altar with a shattered heart, determined to expose her in front of everyone who mattered. What he didn't know, what his mother had carefully hidden, was that those emails were only part of the story. The part that made Mary look guilty. not the part that made her a hero. The morning after the wedding that wasn't, every tabloid in America ran the same story. Billionaire dumps bride at altar, exposes her as gold-digging fraud. Lucas Reed's shocking wedding day confession, she was sent to destroy me. Mystery woman Mary J., who was the caterer who almost married a billionaire. Mary's face was everywhere. Her name was trending. Her life was being dissected by strangers who'd never met her, and she had nowhere to hide. The apartment she'd been staying in, the one Lucas had rented for her, had been cleared out on his orders. Her bank accounts, which had been linked to his for wedding expenses, were frozen. Her phone was flooded with calls from reporters, lawyers, and people she'd never heard of demanding statements. She was sitting on a bench in Santa Monica, still wearing the jeans and t-shirt she'd grabbed when security had escorted her off the estate, when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mary. The voice was cold, familiar, terrifying. Marcus Harrington. You failed, he continued. The wedding didn't happen. The takeover won't happen. And now you're a liability. I didn't fail, Mary said, her voice shaking. I tried to stop it. I tried to warn him. You were supposed to marry him and give us access to his security systems. Instead, you got emotional. You tried to back out. And now the whole plan is destroyed because you couldn't do the one thing we paid you to do. You paid me to survive, Mary shot back. You threatened my family. You said you'd hurt my mother if I didn't. I don't care about your excuses, Marcus interrupted. I care about results, and you failed to deliver. There was a pause. Which means our arrangement is over, and so is your protection. The line went dead. Mary sat there, trembling, the California sun warm on her face, but ice in her veins. She'd been recruited 18 months ago. Marcus Harrington had approached her when she was desperate, drowning in debt. Her mother sick with cancer, no insurance, no options. He'd offered her $500,000. All she had to do was meet Lucas Reed, make him fall in love with her, marry him, and then give Marcus access to the security systems that controlled Nexus Technologies. It seemed simple, victimless. A tech company rivalry that had nothing to do with her. But then she'd actually met Lucas, and everything had changed. He wasn't the cold billionaire she'd expected. He was kind, lonely, broken in, ways that mirrored her own brokenness. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room, the only person in the world, and she'd fallen in love with him. Real love, the kind she'd never believed in. 6 months into their relationship, Mary had made a decision. She couldn't go through with it. She would find another way to save her mother. She would tell Lucas everything and beg for his forgiveness. But Marcus had anticipated her betrayal. He'd started sending men to follow her mother, to photograph her walking to chemotherapy, to make it clear that if Mary backed out, people would get hurt. So Mary had tried a different approach. She'd started documenting everything, every communication with Marcus, every detail of the plan, every person involved. She'd been building a case, evidence that would expose Marcus Harrington and protect Lucas Reed. She'd planned to give it all to Lucas the night before the wedding, but Victoria Reed had gotten there first. Victoria, who had hired private investigators to dig into Mary's past. Victoria, who had found the emails between Mary and Marcus, but only the ones that made Mary look guilty. Victoria, who had presented her evidence to Lucas 3 hours before the ceremony, ensuring he would never hear Mary's side of the story. Victoria, who had her own reasons for wanting this wedding destroyed, reasons that had nothing to do with protecting her son, and everything to do with protecting herself. Here's what destroys me about this moment. Lucas Reed made a decision in 3 hours that destroyed a woman's entire life. He read emails that his mother gave him, assumed they told the whole story, and publicly humiliated the woman he claimed to love. He didn't ask Mary for her side, didn't give her 5 minutes to explain, didn't consider that maybe, just maybe, the situation was more complicated than it appeared. He just believed the worst about her, instantly, completely. How many of us have done the same thing? How many times have we judged someone based on one piece of evidence, assumed the worst about someone we claim to care about, destroyed a relationship because we were too hurt to listen? Subscribe if you've ever realized, too late, that the person you blamed wasn't the villain, that the story you believed wasn't the whole truth, that your anger destroyed something that deserved a second chance. 3 days after the wedding, Lucas sat alone in his Malibu penthouse, staring at the folder his mother had given him. He'd read the emails 100 times, memorized every word, used them to justify his public destruction of Mary J. But something didn't sit right. The woman in those emails, calculating, mercenary, cold, didn't match the woman he'd spent 18 months falling in love with. The Mary he knew cried at sad movies, volunteered at soup kitchens on weekends, insisted on paying for things even when she couldn't afford to. The Mary he knew had looked him in the eyes and told him she loved him, and he'd believed her with every fiber of his being. Had he been that blind, that foolish, or was there something he was missing? He called his head of security, Frank Morrison, a man who'd worked for him for 15 years. "I need you to dig deeper," Lucas said, "into Mary J., into Marcus Harrington, into everything." "Sir, we already—" "Dig deeper. Something doesn't add up." It took Frank 48 hours. When he came back, he had a different folder, thicker, more complete. "You're going to want to sit down for this," Frank said. The truth was worse than Lucas could have imagined. Yes, Mary had been recruited by Marcus Harrington. Yes, she'd been paid to infiltrate Lucas's life. The original emails were real, but the story didn't end there. Frank had found the other emails, the ones Victoria hadn't included in her folder. Emails where Mary told Marcus she wanted out, that she couldn't go through with it, that she'd fallen in love with Lucas and refused to betray him. Emails where Marcus threatened her mother, a woman named Gloria J., currently undergoing chemotherapy in a hospital in Oakland with no insurance and no money. Emails where Mary begged Marcus to leave her family alone, promising to find another way to pay back the money she'd already received. And most damning of all, documents Mary had been compiling in secret. Evidence of Marcus Harrington's entire operation. Not just the plot against Lucas, but years of corporate espionage, bribery, and fraud. She'd been building a case to take him down, to expose him, to protect Lucas by destroying the man who'd sent her. "She was going to give this to you," Frank said quietly, "the night before the wedding. But your mother got to you first." Lucas felt sick. "Why would my mother?" Frank slid another document across the table. "Because Victoria Reed has been working with Marcus Harrington for 6 years." Lucas's world stopped. She's been feeding him information about Nexus, board meetings, security protocols, everything. In exchange, he's been paying her $10 million a year into offshore accounts. Frank met Lucas's eyes. "Your mother wasn't protecting you from Mary J., sir. She was protecting herself. Mary was about to expose everything, including Victoria's involvement. So Victoria made sure you'd never believe a word Mary said." Lucas stared at the documents, his hands shaking. His mother, his own mother, the woman who'd raised him, who'd claimed to want the best for him, who'd handed him that folder with such perfect concern in her eyes. She'd been betraying him for 6 years, and she'd used him to destroy the only person who'd tried to save him. Here's what Mary J. understood that Lucas didn't. Sometimes the people trying to save you don't look like heroes. They look like villains. They look like threats. They look like everything you've been taught to fear. And sometimes the people claiming to protect you, the ones with concerned voices and evidence and years of trust, are the ones holding the knife. Mary came into Lucas's life with bad intentions. That's true, but she changed. She fell in love. She risked everything to protect a man who would eventually destroy her without ever asking for her side of the story. How many people have tried to protect you in ways you didn't understand? How many have been punished for trying to help? Subscribe if you believe that people deserve the chance to explain before we destroy them. That redemption is possible, that the truth is more complicated than the first story we hear. Lucas moved fast. Within 72 hours, he had lawyers, investigators, and federal authorities building a case against Marcus Harrington and Victoria Reed. The evidence Mary had compiled was devastating. Combined with what Frank had uncovered, it painted a picture of a 6-year conspiracy that had cost Nexus Technologies hundreds of millions of dollars and nearly cost Lucas his entire company. Marcus Harrington was arrested at his San Francisco office on charges of corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. The news coverage was spectacular. The mighty tech mogul led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. Victoria Reed's arrest was quieter, more dignified. She'd insisted on turning herself in rather than being dragged out of her Connecticut estate. "You're making a mistake," she told Lucas when he confronted her before the authorities arrived. Everything I did was for this family. You were stealing from me for 6 years. I was securing our future. You were too soft, Lucas, too trusting. Someone had to protect the Reed legacy. By betraying me, by framing an innocent woman, by destroying my wedding. Victoria's eyes went cold. That woman was not innocent. She was a plant, a fraud. She was trying to save me, Lucas said. From Marcus, from you, and you made sure I'd never know. He stepped closer to his mother. You didn't protect me. You used me, just like you've used everyone your entire life. Victoria said nothing, but for the first time, Lucas saw something crack behind her perfect facade. Fear. Goodbye, mother. The authorities took her away. The media exploded. Billionaire's mother arrested in corporate espionage scandal. Victoria Reed's decade of betrayal. Lucas Reed exposes his own family. But Lucas didn't care about the headlines. He cared about finding Mary. She disappeared after the wedding. No phone, no forwarding address, no digital footprint. She'd become a ghost, hiding from Marcus's people, from the media, from the world that had destroyed her. Frank found her eventually. A motel in Bakersfield, paying cash, using a fake name, visiting her mother at a hospital across town, sneaking in and out to avoid being recognized. She's broke, Frank reported. The money Marcus paid her, she used most of it on her mother's treatment. The rest was frozen when you cut off her accounts. She's been living on nothing for days. Lucas felt the weight of what he'd done crushing his chest. He'd taken everything from her, the woman who'd tried to save him, and he'd destroyed her without a second thought. I need to see her, Lucas said. She might not want to see you. I know, but I have to try. The motel room door opened slowly. Mary J. stood there in clothes that looked like they'd been worn for days. Her eyes were red. Her face was gaunt. She looked nothing like the radiant woman who'd almost become his wife. She looked broken. Lucas. Her voice was flat, hollow. What do you want? To apologize. Okay, you've apologized. You can go now. She started to close the door. Lucas put his hand out to stop it. Mary, please, I know what you did. I know you were trying to protect me. I know about Marcus, about my mother, about everything. Mary stared at him. And that changes what? You stood at that altar and called me a fraud in front of 300 people. You threw me out like I was garbage. You didn't even let me explain. I know. I lost everything because of you. My reputation, my home, my safety. Marcus's people are looking for me because I didn't complete the job. I can't even visit my mother without looking over my shoulder. Her voice cracked. I tried to save you, Lucas. I gave up everything to protect you, and you destroyed me anyway. Lucas felt tears burning his eyes. I'm sorry, he said. Those words aren't enough. I know they're not, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this right. He held out an envelope. Your mother's medical bills are paid, all of them, present and future. The best oncologists in the country are flying in to consult on her case. She's going to get every treatment she needs. Mary stared at the envelope, but didn't take it. I don't want your money. It's not charity, it's debt. I owe you more than I can ever repay. He pulled out another document. Marcus Harrington is in federal custody. So is my mother. Neither of them can hurt you or your family ever again. He set the document on the small table by the door. And this is a deed, a house in Oakland near your mother's hospital. It's in your name, paid off, no strings attached. Mary's hands trembled. Why are you doing this? Because you tried to save me when no one else would. Because you gave up everything and asked for nothing in return. Because I was too blind and too proud to see what was right in front of me. He stepped back. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking you to let me help, to let me fix what I broke. Mary looked at the envelope, the documents, the man she'd loved and lost and nearly died for. You humiliated me, she said quietly, in front of the whole world. I know. You believed your mother over me without asking a single question. I know. And now you want to make it right with money and houses and apologies? Lucas shook his head. I want to make it right by spending the rest of my life proving I'm not the man who did that to you, whether you're in my life or not, whether you ever speak to me again or not." He turned to leave. "Lucas." He stopped. Mary walked toward him slowly. Her eyes were still wounded, still guarded, but something else was there now. Hope. Maybe. "My mother's really going to be okay?" "The best doctor's money can buy, I promise." Mary nodded slowly. Then she did something Lucas didn't expect. She hugged him. Not a romantic embrace, not forgiveness, just human connection. Two broken people holding each other in a dingy motel hallway. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," Mary whispered. "I know. But thank you for believing me, finally." They stood there for a long moment, and Lucas Reed, the billionaire who'd walked away from the altar, finally understood that love wasn't about grand gestures or expensive weddings. It was about showing up, again and again, even when you'd been wrong, even when you didn't deserve another chance, especially then. 1 year later, Gloria J's cancer went into remission. Mary started a nonprofit helping women escape dangerous situations, funded anonymously by a donation that matched exactly what Marcus Harrington had paid her. Victoria Reed was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. She and Lucas never spoke again. Marcus Harrington got 15 years. His company was dissolved. His legacy was destroyed. And Lucas Reed? He stepped down as CEO of Nexus Technologies, turned it over to people he trusted, started spending his time on things that actually mattered. He and Mary weren't together. Not romantically. The wound was too deep, the trust too broken. But they were friends, real friends. The kind who call each other at midnight and tell the truth even when it hurts. "Do you regret it?" Mary asked him once, a year after the wedding that wasn't. Walking away from the altar, Lucas thought about it. "I regret how I did it," he said. "I regret believing lies without asking questions. I regret destroying you when you were trying to save me." He paused. "But I don't regret learning the truth about my mother, about Marcus, about what really matters." Mary smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in a year. "And what matters?" "People," Lucas said simply. "Not money, not power, not legacy, just people. The ones who show up for you when it costs them everything." He looked at her. "People like you." Mary reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Maybe there's hope for you yet, Lucas Reed." Maybe there was. The end. Here's what Lucas's story teaches us about redemption. It's not about being perfect. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about what you do after you realize you were wrong. Lucas Reed destroyed Mary J. Publicly, completely. He believed lies, acted on anger, and ruined an innocent woman's life. But when he learned the truth, he didn't hide, didn't make excuses, didn't pretend it wasn't that bad. He showed up. He took responsibility. He spent his resources making things right, not to win her back, but because it was the right thing to do. That's not about money. That's about character. Maybe you've hurt someone who didn't deserve it. Maybe you've believed the wrong story about the wrong person. Maybe you've destroyed something precious because you were too proud to ask questions. Subscribe if you believe it's never too late to make things right. That showing up matters more than being perfect. That the people who hurt us can still become the people who heal us if they're willing to do the work. Because redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about building a better future, one act of kindness at a time. Bye.